I'm Dana Han-Klein here with Greg Sestero for The Room, The Disaster Artist, and Best Friends.
James Franco says that you and Tommy text every day. True or false?
True.
True? Really?
I mean, out of 365 days during the year, I would say that's a pretty accurate. Pretty accurate, yeah.
What is an average conversation like?
I mean, also, we did make 2 films over the past year, so we were very much involved. We went to all the premieres with the Disaster Artist. So we're these last 18 months have been very involved for those reasons as well. But I mean, I think in general, you know, when you start out on a crazy adventure with someone, you're kind of attached in that way. So you're always wondering how things are going. And we haven't really drifted off too far, especially recently.
Collaborating again.
Yeah. And so it's pretty, it's just one of those things you can't really describe it. But yeah, you're connected.
Your best friend, if you will.
Yeah.
Are you so happy that texting exists now and he's not calling you all the time? And
Texting is, he's actually a pretty savvy texter. I mean, his emojis are pretty clever. Yeah. I'm impressed.
I too. I'm sure. I can only imagine like the creativity.
Yeah, he cracks me up. I was like, that's pretty good.
Do you feel like you're living just like the land of Inception, where you write a book about making a movie, and then they make that into a movie, and then you make a documentary about that, then you make another movie with the other person you made a movie with? Is this real?
It's just been so insane in so many ways. I haven't stopped to think about everything that's happened because I've kind of been in this zone where I've just wanted to create and just get out there and, you know, and keep the ball rolling, that I haven't really stopped to think about what's happened. But if I did, I'm sure I'd be like, wait, what did I get myself involved in? But I mean, there's so many things that could happen in this business, and I feel really lucky in a lot of ways that none of this really should have happened. So the fact that we're sitting here, you know, all these years later, and you know, this year having gone to the Golden Globes and watching James win Best Actor, having the screenplay be nominated for an Oscar, it's one of those things. It's like, it's everything you would have wanted. It just came in a very bizarre package, but at the same time, you still got that package, so you got to appreciate it.
So you and Tommy are reunited on Best Friends, which you wrote. The tables are turned a little bit, you know, you're the auteur now in that sense. Is being on the set life different this time, or I'd imagine set life had to be different. I hope set life was a little bit different, but as a co-star, was it?
It was totally different. Like, I really had fun this time.
Good.
The Room was different because we were living on Tommy's planet. Really didn't know anything going in, but this time I had a clear vision of what I wanted to do, and I think we were both hungry to try to do something new, and that made a big difference.
Was it challenging for you to hand over your work to a different director? I mean, also with Disaster Artist, in a sense, you know, you're entrusting someone with the kind of core of your. Yeah,
I did get lucky with both, because when I spoke with James, like right away he got the story so perfectly, and he was such a great person to play Tommy, and I could just tell that James was going to do a great job. And then working with the director with Best Friends, Justin McGregor, young kid who saw The Room when he was 16. And right away, we just got, like, we want to make something that's intriguing and dark with Tommy in the lead role, and take it seriously. And we both got that. So it was very fun to work with somebody you share a vision with. So, it just worked.
Paul Scheer's in it. We talked about this earlier. He's also in The Disaster Artist.
Yep.
He's a fan of The Room. What, did you cast him? Did he ask to be in it? Like,
no, I met Paul in 2011.
Yeah.
I did the podcast How Did This Get Made, which is one of the best podcasts out there.
They love The Room.
Yeah, we did the Room episode.
Yep.
And it was just, I was lucky. It was one of the first things I did, and it was one of the best things that I got to meet Paul, and kept in touch, and I sent him the book when I was writing it. He's always been really supportive and cool, and so I was so stoked when he was in The Disaster Artist. I thought, this is just like, he better be.
He was so stoked he was in The Disaster Artist.
Yeah, he better be, because he's done so much for The Room. And so when we were making this movie, I thought of a few key roles to put, you know, good actors to work opposite Tommy. And so Paul was one of the first people I thought of.
Are you implying that Tommy is not a good actor?
What's that?
I said,
he's an interesting actor.
Co-stars.
But I thought putting him with different personalities could be interesting. And Paul was one of the first people I thought of, so I just reached out and said, hey, would you do these couple scenes? Now, what's funny is the story evolved in a way. So Paul was really cool because he came on, he kind of read it, got a feel for what was going on. He came on, he was great. You know, he worked a day, and the scenes with Tommy were just gold. And then it kind of, the story evolved, and so he's in both parts. So it was really funny because he's like, yeah, I haven't seen it, but everyone's like, hey, you're great, you're in this, like, here's a sequel. He's like, wait, what did I get myself into? But yeah, I was just so excited he was part of it. I thought it was just, it was so fitting.
It's in 2 parts.
Yeah, so I wrote the script here when I was in the Bay, visiting family.
Yep.
In 4 days. Being up here, I thought of some experiences that I had when Tommy and I drove up to Bodega Bay.
Sure.
It was a bizarre road trip, and I kind of started playing with that, and I just wrote it out in 4 days, and I did not see it as 2 films. It was just this kind of strange story that took place in LA, it took place in Big Sur, and then it went to the desert. And so when we filmed everything and we got to the editing, a buddy of mine who's a local Bay Area guy, Alex Pardee, he watched it and he thought that was it. It was like the first half, and it's like, okay, I need to like think about this and digest it. And I'm like,
but wait, there's more.
I was like, there's like a whole. He's like, what? So I realized there that it was maybe a little too much to try to put everything into one film. And we were doing some test screenings in London, and we just didn't have time to get it all down. So I was like, let's just see how this works. And it just gave us more time to realize there was a second film there. So that's just how that's the way to do it. You make one film, and then
you make another. Yeah, well,
so
that's kind of the joy of filmmaking now, is that you can do that. You can get away with that.
Yeah. No, and I think the aesthetic and everything in the second film, I think it'll work. I'm hoping it'll work.
If you were to write a sequel to the book, The Disaster Artist, about kind of your life now, what would it be called?
A different kind of disaster or something like that. I don't know. You know what? That was the thing. It's like there was so much left to tell, and that's what kind of Best Friends is. It's like a spiritual sequel to this whole thing.
Disaster Artist 2 Electric Boogaloo, but hopefully better.
Yeah. It's something. Yeah.
Okay. I heard you described it as Nightcrawler meets Double Indemnity.
That's a hell yeah. I just I love LA stories, especially ones that take you into kind of a underground world you don't know about. You know, Nightcrawler does a great job with getting you into the news world. Drive is like the stunt double, and this guy who drives criminals around. So that's kind of what I was looking for with this film, is going into a different part of LA we haven't seen yet, shooting LA in a way we haven't seen yet, and just capturing just a character story that's different, that's original. So I wasn't scared to go out and make something that I knew people were going to take it as just being kind of out there, but it was sincere. And so I think that's where you're able to give an audience a surprise, is when you're not afraid to take a risk and fail. And that's kind of what we did. We just kind of were trying to be bold with making something different.
Logistically or emotionally, what was the most challenging scene to film?
Really, I think with this film, once we got into shooting, it was fine. It's just there's so much work that has to be done with the film, and I think it's really the foundation scenes that are the hardest. And I think it was getting Tommy's character, for Tommy to emote what's really proper to tell the story. There's a few scenes that he can't Tommy out. Do you know what I mean? And so
sadly I do.
And so like you couldn't let him just do his thing, and because then the whole movie doesn't work. And so there was a few key scenes that we had to go back and revisit and rethink. And that's where Justin, the director, really had to get creative in the way he captured it, because Tommy can be a compelling actor, but he also can kind of fall into a rhythm that is not productive for storytelling. And so we were able to kind of set it up to where Tommy could succeed. But some of these scenes were really tough.
Do you feel responsible for him sometimes? Like, were you hesitant at all to make another movie with him? Because, like, reading The Disaster Artist, it sounds like there were times that were very trying for
Absolutely. I mean, I think it'd been a long time. I was at a different place. I understood what he was trying to do years later, and so I knew after writing The Disaster Artist, I had enough experience with, when you complete a project and it goes out there and people like it, you develop more confidence, and you also feel like there's more things you want to try. And so I was in a better place now to try to take on that challenge.
Was there like a catalytic event that you were like, I now understand what you were trying to do with the room, or is it just sort
Absolutely.
Of, what was it?
I think he really believed that this was going to affect people emotionally, because when I was writing the story, on like the last day, I really felt emotional for what was happening. Like I lived it. I didn't outline the story. I just went into it and felt the story and wrote it and thought ahead a little bit, but it came naturally. I was like, this is something that I really want to do. And then you make it, and you put it out there, and you think it's going to move and affect people, and people are laughing through it. It's like, how would that make me feel? Especially if it was so personal.
Sure.
I don't know how I would take that. It's confusing in a way.
He seems to have taken it well, eventually.
Yeah, I think ultimately he realizes people responded to it.
Sure.
And that's, as a filmmaker, I think that if you hear noise in a theater and you hear people engaging with the film, then you did something right. Because the worst thing you can have is people falling asleep or walking out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I assume not only as a filmmaker, but for you, like as an actor, it does my performance.
Yeah.
Catch people.
Yeah.
Was there a point where you were just like, you know what, I'm in for the room? Because it sounded like right after it came out, you might have distanced yourself a little bit from it, but
yeah, I mean, the room was never something that I was gonna like show friends. Sure. and publicize in that way. It was intriguing to me to see how people would respond to it.
And boy, did they!
And when they did, I was like, oh, what do you guys like about it? Like, are they seeing the same things I saw in that acting class when I first met Tommy? And so I was intrigued by it more so than anything else. So when people started seeing it more and more, because it's something that was so small that you made with your friend that you didn't think anybody was going to see. So it was a really fascinating thing to experience. And then it wasn't until the Entertainment Weekly article that came out that people just fell in love with it. And that's when it was like, okay, now you're in. What's the smartest thing you can do to tell your story and move forward? And I felt like as an actor, you're not going to really be given anything serious. So telling a story is something you would have more creative control over. I
feel like people liked it in between. Like, they wouldn't have written an EW article about it, and those people
that was the thing
were obsessed with it.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much people love this movie already.
So what were you doing in that time, since, like, The Room wrapped, and then there was a kind of lull, and then the surge of suddenly, like, everyone was aware of?
From, like, 2003, 2004 to 2009, I was doing, like, modeling and commercial work. I lived abroad.
Was that to escape them? No.
Yeah, it wasn't really a thing. I was showing in LA once a month. Yeah. 30, 40 people would show up maybe. So it had no effect on anybody involved with the movie. And so it was totally off my radar. I was like, the billboard was still up, but it wasn't a thing, at least from what I knew. So it wasn't until I got that call from Entertainment Weekly where he's like, you have celebrity fans and it's being studied in universities, and that's when I was just like, you got to be kidding me. But at the same time, it gave, like, people are always like, God, if you could just go back and not do it. But to be honest, it was the one thing that kind of saved me from leaving the business. Because at that point, you kind of tapped out. A lot of people do that. They go to LA and they give it a shot and they do a few things. And then some years go by, they get in a relationship, they move on. I had done the modeling commercial stuff, but I was about ready to be like, okay, this isn't fulfilling. How do you get back into acting? How do you get back into this whole thing? And then The Room presents itself, and I was like, this is the chance. This is something that now you're in something that people are seeing. What do you do with that?
How do you define success now, and how has that evolved since you started and entered this industry?
Success when I first started was to be accepted and be cast in like these TV shows and big projects. And something you got to realize is we're not all cut out for that. You may want to be the next Al Pacino.
Or James Dean.
And that might not be the way you affect people. And I think it's really important to know who you are and to know that you have something to offer that nobody else does. and you need to find what that is. And so I think I tried to fit in initially, like when I got signed by Iris Burton, she's like, Miramax would love you, and she had like Josh Hartnett and all these people at that time, but that's not where I fit in. I wasn't going to do She's All That, or I had just more of like an offbeat, I was more drawn to like films like Fight Club or David Lynch, and I had just a kind of a different mentality that I wouldn't fit in. So I wasn't getting cast in these things, and I took it really personally, and so success for me now is not trying to please others, but trying to really create something that's true to you and something that's going to affect people differently because you have your own voice. And I think with The Disaster Artist and now with Best Friends, is something that I feel like, stop trying to please people, stop trying to fit in to something that you're not, and have people accept you for really what you are. And if that's, not James Dean or whatever, because James Dean didn't even know what James Dean was. He wanted to be Marlon Brando. And so he ended up becoming his own thing through the circumstances. But I think just getting out there and finding your voice and making films, and if people can love those films because they come from you, then I think that's success.
Would you want to direct?
It hasn't hit me yet. Making these films, I realize you have to really have that skill. I can see shots and I can think of edits, but to do that completely, I think it's going to take time.
What inspires you?
Defying the odds, I think. It's a great feeling to know that you did something unique and people have responded to it.
What frustrates you?
I think limits. I think setting limits on yourself, kind of letting those negative thoughts creep in, I think is something that's frustrating, that I think we all kind of fight through. But I think just lack of ambition as well frustrates.
What's one thing you wish you had more time for?
Family and relationships.
What's a guilty pleasure of yours?
I would say Lifetime movies.
What is your favorite Lifetime movie? Do you watch the Christmas one?
I haven't. I've seen one. It was what was it? That Jodi Arias movie, or I just like the kind of those, just kind of cheesy thrillers where like everybody turns on each other and like the last. Yeah.
Trust
yeah,
no one.
Yeah.
Trust no one.
Yeah, like there's one called Watch Your Back. I thought was really funny.
How do you relax? I see Lifetime movies.
I haven't done much relaxing recently, but really coming back to the Bay is what we were speaking about earlier, being in Danville, being in like a quiet area, serene, going on long walks, middle of nowhere, in the mountains, whatever, is usually how I like to relax.
Did you and James Franco talk about, you guys are like the same age and you're both from the Bay. Did you talk about that at all? Just like, hey, I grew up doing this. Did you go to the thing?
Yeah, we, well, he was in Palo Alto.
Yeah, there's considerable distance there, but...
Decent, but, yeah, we're like 3 months apart. It's crazy. We both were...
It's kismet.
He went to LA a year
Oh, did he?
before I did,
Oh.
I think, right after high school, because he went to UCLA. So... Something about the Bay and acting.
Growing up, who was your favorite fictional, so you can't say James Dean, hero or heroine?
I would say probably Luke Skywalker.
You have the hair for it, too. So dream casting in the pseudo movie of the making of Best Friends. So the disaster artist in the room, the whatever the best friends. Who would you want to play you?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Interesting. You seem to travel a lot for the room stuff and PR and press stuff. What's the most bizarre or like far-reaching place that you've gone for like a room or disaster artist or
Iceland?
Really?
Norway.
Where'd you go in Iceland?
Reykjavik?
No, but like was there a theater there?
Oh yeah,
How many people went to that? There's only like 300,000 people on that island.
Yeah, it was a lot of fans out there.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of fans. Yeah, Iceland was probably the coolest place.
What's the most bizarre fan request that you've gotten?
I don't know. It's signing IDs or passports or like copies of other people's book, like Catcher in the Rye, dollar bills.
Who's your most famous fan?
When we went to the Golden Globes, we met a lot of people that enjoyed the movie, like Tom Hanks said he really liked Disaster Artist.
Well.
Another one, Oakland. Daniel Kaluuya from Get Out was very cool. He said he had come to a screening that we'd done a Q&A for. Oh. Everyone was just really supportive and cool, and Angelina Jolie said she had seen the movie and liked it. Oh. So I was just like,
sweet.
All right, guys.
Okay, my last question is, do you still have your kind of lucky cargo casting shorts?
I do have a lot of those clothes. I still have the denim jacket from The Room that Dave wore in the movie.
Did you wear it in the movie?
He did.
The actual one?
Yeah, he did.
Wow.
Yeah. I did wear my shorts to castings. It worked for Puppet Master. That was about it.
Exactly. Well, it's still, you should frame them somewhere. Just have a little Puppet Master.
Yeah, I've always been really superstitious. Like, I have to do the same thing if something worked the exact same way. I don't know. It just affects you in a different way. If you really believe in something, you try to do everything you can to get an edge on something being successful, and a lot of that's psychological. So,
what are some of your other superstitions? If you're willing to say. If you don't, I totally understand.
I think wearing the same thing is pretty common. I've even gotten to the point where I'll eat the same thing at the same time, sitting in the same seat. I don't know, it's strange. If you love something and you want something so bad, you're gonna create a different world to how to get there. You know, and a lot of times people will be like, "That's, it doesn't really work that way." But if you believe that,
look at sports fans. I won't travel outside the city if my home team's playing.
Yeah,
so I think it's very valid. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
On all the things.
No, thank you so much.